Okay, so I'm still yet to watch this film, but I really want to talk about this video that I came across. It's by Midnight's Edge, so support to Midnight's Edge. Thanks for so much for this video. So I just want to break down this video and sort of give you a review of my understanding from what's really covered by Midnight's Edge and how this whole backlash to with the Woman King is taking place and my thoughts on it. So just to give you guys some context, right? I do understand that The Woman King is based on the actual story of a slave trader, right? And so, because they were involved in the slave trading of African slaves, the African community themselves don't really like this individual. It's sort of a villain in their own country, right? Like it's probably like Hitler in Germany, or like Ravan in Sri Lanka or something like that, right? I'm not sure if I'm getting that right, but yeah, right? Like in Germany itself, there are Germans who hate Hitler, even though Hitler was ruling their military at the time when he was leading their country to war. The same way today, Russians hate Vladimir Putin. There are a lot of Russians that actually hate Vladimir Putin, and so I think that this person falls in a similar category where um, the Woman King may be a story about this actually I heard that she's a completely fictional character and this guy's the real king. So I don't know, there's some weird woke shit going on here, guys. It's like so confusing. But basically, let's not talk about whether it's a king or a man. Let's just talk about the kingdom, right? So the kingdom is ruled by a ruler who's similar to Putin or Hitler, who is known for the wrong things, but is used to sort of justify their decision making in some way, like sort of justify Putin's decision making, which is he is right to attack Ukraine because he doesn't want NATO at his borders because he wants to protect Russia, or what Hitler said. I think the only thing that I could think of that Hitler justifies is that the Jews are sort of like the plague in their community. Like they're like this resented foreign community group who they see as not just second-class citizens, but as not really human. They dehumanize them in a lot of ways. They see them like vermin, and they see them like slaves. And so, he ultimately thought that he's doing the right thing for the Germans by eradicating the Jews. And yeah, but you can't really justify shit like that because it's just pure evil, right? Why would like in our modern age, if any leader takes up a decision like that, I think as citizens we should just totally go to war against our own government. But it's not that simple, right? A lot of communities, you get oppressed. You either follow the rulers, the bullies, or you get bullied. And I think the Woman King is sort of riding off that idea. So let's just watch this video a little bit,
Hail
right?
from the black community. In this editorial, I
Okay.
will begin with exploring what is so bad about the Woman
What's bad
King,
about it,
the
right? So
measures the studio have gone through to.
right. So apparently the
Now,
the interesting thing is the fact that people thought that like the way the Woman King represents itself, especially what Viola Davis was talking about in her recent post, which was that if you don't support this film, it means you don't ever want a black woman leading in a film. For me, quite frankly, I don't care who's in the lead. I just want a good story, right? That's me. Maybe there are people who really don't want a black woman in the lead of the film, but if they exist, right, their opinion already doesn't matter because they're inherently racist, right? If they just don't want a particular race or a particular gender to be in the lead of a film. But I think they completely missed the point here in coming up with a statement like that because there's clearly something else going on. So yeah.
Full disclosure, this is a part of history that, like most, I am not too familiar with.
Okay, so this guy is
Discussion
also
on it.
not too familiar with the history that he's talking about here. So he did his own research, something like what I did, and I'm sure I can dig up more
Both of which you will
information.
find linked in the description. No means can claim any kind of expertise on the topic.
Okay,
Violence,
fair enough.
doubt, and without much gray area, share evil. They
Hmm.
weren't merely slavers, they
Okay,
were practically perpetrators of genocide.
right,
History versus Hollywood writes, and I
right.
warn
So
you
so they're very much similar to the Nazis, right?
that this is a graphic account. The kingdom of Dahomey.
Okay, so let's just read through this. We learned that in real life, the Dahomey were much more villains than heroes. Kingdom was bloodthirsty society bent on conquest. It was customary for the Dahomey to return home with rotting heads and genitals of those they killed in battle. The conquering neighboring African states then took their citizens as slaves. selling many in the Atlantic slave trade in exchange for items like rifles, tobacco, and alcohol. Many of the slaves were sold, ended up in America, and they also kept some slaves for themselves to work on royal plantations. So they were just basically slave traders, right? And as I said before in my previous video, there's nothing unusual about a kingdom using slaves. In all our history, every king, every queen, in their kingdoms respectively, had slaves. Today, we just give them titles and call them officer or minister or manager or whatever, but at the end, they are in some form of or another a slave to society. It's just that today, we don't have full control over the people who are our subordinates, people who are, you're a manager to or you're a boss to. You can't tell them to do whatever you want. But, in medieval times, slavery was absolutely brutal. It's basically they own you. They can do whatever they want to you. They can cut you up and tell you that you just have to listen to them to do it. And you're forced to do it, or you lose your head, you lose your hands, you lose your dick. You lose all sorts of things. Basically, they just cut you up, and that's how brutal history was. And the example that I gave in the previous video was that Daenerys Targaryen, for example, in the original Game of Thrones, also enslaved a huge army of eunuchs to go to war with her. Sure, she told them that I'm going to free you now, and the rest of you can go to wherever you want. You're free to do whatever you want. But at the end, she did take the remaining army that stayed with her to war, and they're technically eunuch slaves, right? So yeah, she gives them the freedom and the will to sort of decide what they want, but they ultimately should still bend the knee to her and call her queen. So it's hard to justify how people look at things just because they like the character that's riding at the top. At the end of the day, she's no different from all the other slave traders because she's ultimately using the victims of mass slavery and castration to be in her front lines, right? So yeah, anyway, there's that. So yeah, okay, this is
Titles,
the first part.
they this much
Then he
women
goes to the next paragraph, which is they conducting slave raids on villages and they cut their heads off of the elderly, rip the okay, basically all the brutality that they do, right? Let's see what else. So it says here the Agoji, who are the women warriors, fought in slave raids along with the male fighters. Okay, that's something I'll take note because I have not seen many male fighters in the footage that I've watched about this film. So kind of interesting. But anyway, we'll see. Roughly 500 slaves and criminals were mass executed in large-scale human sacrifices during the religious ceremonies of a festival known as the annual customs of Dahomey. Wow, the 1727 annual customs of the Dahomey ceremony reportedly saw as many as 4,000 people sacrificed. Holy shit, that is mass genocide. Okay, that's some dark, evil stuff, man.
John Boyega's character, King
Okay,
Giso, is a real historic character.
right. So King Kiso is real. Um, okay,
But Viola Davis' character, Naniska, who demands the Dahomey stop slavery,
okay.
is entirely
Fictional?
fictional.
Yes. Okay. Right. So that was I guess that was right. So Viola Davis is not a real character of that existed in this part of history.
Even though there are historic references to a teenager girl of that name. Only she didn't demand slaves be freed so much as she beheaded them.
Right. So this is
In
where
other words,
the history was actually skewed and changed to match what do you call this? Whatever the narrative that they want to tell, right? The story they ultimately want to
but
tell.
a few out of many have changed some events or ignored some context for the
Mm.
purpose of furthering a narrative.
Okay, right. So they're giving 300 as an example of a story that doesn't exactly tell you the real story, but yeah, they alter the context for narrative purposes. But the 300 is not based on the actual story. It's just inspired by the story to give you a comic book story. There's literally a comic written by a
But the
person
liberties taken
about
by
this,
the
right?
Woman King go. It's one thing when a Marvel movie does it, or a
Yeah.
genre flick like The Mummy, because
Okay.
they never claimed to be historically accurate in the
Yes,
first
this is a
place,
good point.
or based on real events.
Right, that's exactly a good point, right? The idea is when you make something like a 300 comic, you don't tell that it is accurate. You tell that this loosely based on it because we just want inspiration from it to make our own comic, right? It's not based on actual events. It's something like The Watchmen, where there's the assassination of what do you call this? The U.S. president, right? Kennedy, right? I think it's Kennedy. And so Kennedy's assassination, basically, they depict it in some other way in The Watchmen, but it's not based on actual
The
history, right?
Woman King does both.
Right.
That is the key
So
difference
the
here.
Woman King actually tells you that it's based on real history. Wow.
If the producers were hoping for another Black Panther, and they
Uh-huh.
were, in the hashtag historical epic that hit theaters
I don't
today,
think that's
in
the
reality,
thing they can ever do
critics
here.
has been whitewashed. Time to boycott the Woman King movie. The film is about the Dahomey and
Whitewashed.
Benin that traded slaves into the transatlantic. This may be the most
Wait, I don't get it. How is it whitewashed? Okay. Two white woman writers. Okay, I honestly don't care if they're white woman writers or white men writers or black woman writers or gay writers or whatever. I don't think that's the point. Like the writer's gender and sexual orientation and whatever beliefs doesn't really matter. What matters here is why they would alter the story and then say it's based on true events, and it's not. That's I think should be the focus
challenge
here.
for Sony here is that there really hasn't been any backlash to the movie to speak of at all.
Okay.
And what there is comes from the black community and is based on actual written history.
Wait, I don't get it. How can they say that they clearly didn't get any backlash when there's
So the
literally a
only real
hashtag?
response has been see this movie, or you'll support the narrative that black women cannot lead the
Right.
box office.
Yeah, yeah, okay. So this is the article that I came across, which is
And see
that
a
that basically if you don't watch this film,
movie,
you're supporting that black women can't be in lead roles. Yeah, I saw this, and I believe that Viola Davis was actually supporting this
or you'll
statement here.
support the narrative. If you ignore the falsifying of history, The
Okay,
Woman King is, by all accounts, a very good movie.
interesting.
It tells an African story, and there should be more movie history, thousands upon thousands of years. And
Right.
these stories should be told and presented to a wider audience.
Okay, I completely agree that if it's a great movie in its core, it tells you a story about this lady who does not support the slavery that is being conducted by her king, and she wants to go up against it because she wants to, I don't know, raise a community of warriors, just to protect themselves or whatever. I think it's absolutely fine. But I think, yeah, labeling it as based on the story of this tribe that used to have mass genocide and alter those events and claim that it's based on the actual events. Yeah, I think
Should be a charge.
difficult.
Sony chose to back two white social justice activists in
Uh-huh,
telling a lie and a falsification of history.
I
They
see.
didn't tell an African story. They told a story that fits their revisionist and subversive agenda. That is the issue here.
Hmm.
Sony got played and made the wrong movie. One can only hope that they and everyone else will recognize it and not let that deter them from telling actual African stories that should be told in the future.
I absolutely agree. This is I 100%. This is like this sentence that he just mentioned is perfect. This shouldn't deter anyone from producing actually good, compelling stories or stories just like this, right? But don't brand it as based on a true story. Don't brand it as based on actual events. Brand it as a fictional story inspired by actual events, and you're safe. You're good to go, right? Because you can totally make a fictional story where Hitler is a good guy. You can, and I believe some people actually have. There's one, there's a parody I've seen. I can't remember, but it's a parody that I've seen about this African American guy who sort of like goes to space and has to fight like a bunch of Nazis or whatever. And you kind of feel bad for the Nazis because they're like so scared about how powerful this guy is coming to invade against them. And they also have Albert Einstein. I can't remember what it's called, but it's a parody film, and it's kind of hilarious. And so you can do things like that for comedic purposes. You know, change the story to your own narrative. Just say it's inspired by this, but it's actually a completely fictional narrative. You want to show that there's a different side to the story, make people question the possibility that history had been altered in some way. Could there be some other side to this story that we haven't been told? But don't tell them that that's actual fact when real historians have already proven to you what their research is based on, right? The historical evidence that they have. And if you don't have that kind of backing in your film, you can't tell a story that's based on actual history and claim that it is. It's a very dangerous line to cross. It's like telling it's like creating an actual film of falling over the edge of the Earth when you already have established fact that the Earth is round, right? But you can totally tell a fictional story where in the past people did believe that you can fall off the edge of the Earth and the Earth is not round, it's actually flat. And so you could tell it in a fictional form where it's based on it's inspired by the actual true events where people did believe that the Earth was flat. Unfortunately, some people still do, but that's for another day. So,
Let me
yeah.
know your thoughts on this in the comments.
All right, that's my thoughts by watching your video, Midnight's Edge. I'm actually going to subscribe to you because I absolutely like that. I'm not going to leave a like here just yet because that really messes up my search algorithm, but I will give you my subscription. Thanks so much for this video. It's really nice to hear someone's neutral opinion, I would say, because this person, as he said, does not have a holistic idea of the actual history. He had to do his own research. He got his details by looking up information online as well as probably talking to people. And so I believe the idea he has of the opinion that he has come up with is actually really really genuine, and I really like that. And so if whoever these people really were, however brutal they may have been, let that just be in history, and let's not use this to glorify slavery or brutality or whatever, and instead take this as a lesson and come up with a story that says that someone did try to fight and stop slavery, and I think that's absolutely fine. So anyway, that's my thoughts and opinions on this one. I really think that this is something very interesting to know how, at this time like in this time, after all the films that have been made, people still want to make films without proper research and without proper studying of, the concept of falsifying history. I think it's a very, very dangerous line to cross, especially when, people really question their beliefs these days by just watching films. And I think this reminds me of what WWF, right? World Wrestling Federation. Of course, now it's changed to WWE, but remember when people really thought it was real, right? So yeah, they also had to change the name from WWF, which was the official name for the World Wrestling Federation, and so they had to change it to WWE, which is World Wrestling Entertainment, because they had to prove to people that it's not actual wrestling and it's actually only for entertainment purpose. So yeah, I mean, people are gullible, and so we shouldn't be making films based on falsified history, because people might actually think it's real one day and use this to argue in their class, the history class, that this is what reality is. That Viola Davis did lead a
Most
group
of
of
its wealth
people to go out to
best
war
executed.
and whatever, right? So yeah, anyway, that's it from me for this one. I'll see you guys in the next. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, take care and support good filmmaking, not this. See you guys.